This is our second activity in this unit, and this activity has 2 layers. This video is for layer 1. What we're going to need for the activity in general is 2 pieces of patty paper, a pencil, a ruler, and a compass. If you don't have a compass handy, you can use anything circular to make a nice circle, perfect circle on your patty paper, but you want your circle to be as close to 2 inches in radius as possible. There are a couple of reasons for this, but if you're doing this activity at home on your own because you missed class, then just try to make your circle as close to 2 inches as possible. When you compare your circle and your end result here with those in your group, you may find that your results don't quite match what we're expecting, and that would be because your circle isn't exactly 2 inches and the rest of your group members' circles are closer to 2 inches. To start with, take one of your pieces of patty paper and just approximately in the center of the paper, as close as you can, but just by eyeballing it, draw a single dot. Now take the second layer of patty paper, lay it over the first one, line things up, and trace that dot. So you've got the same dot in the middle of both layers in the same location. Set one piece aside for now. And then the next thing we're going to do requires the use of a compass. So I'm going to take a few extra layers of regular paper and put them down underneath my working surface. This does a couple of things. One, it protects the surface of the desk underneath here. I don't want to damage that surface. But equally, it also makes the drawing of the circle easier. If you put the point of a compass on a piece of wax paper like this, directly onto the surface of, say, a classroom desk, as you start to draw your circle, the paper tends to slide around and the point of the compass slips around on the surface of the desk. So it makes it hard to draw the circle accurately or nicely. So just putting a couple of extra sheets of paper, even just scratch paper down underneath you as you work, will help. The next thing I want to do before I draw my circle is to ensure that my compass is set to 2 inches. Even though the marks on the arc of this compass here are not actually in inches, what happens is if you set this to 2 inches here on the arc of the compass, it ensures that the legs of the compass are 2 inches apart, and that's what I want, because I want the circle I'm about to draw to have a radius of 2 inches. Set the point of the compass down on the dot that you drew, and start to draw your circle. But notice that as you pull your compass around more and more, it gets more and more difficult to put your arm or your body into the orientation that it needs to make that circle easily. So I've actually found that if I move the paper around and just keep my hand and my arm within sort of a fixed range of motion, if you will, that makes it much easier to draw the circle. The compass that I'm using is not an expensive one, it's not a very good one. So I'm going to have trouble keeping the arms of the compass exactly at 2 inches unless I'm very careful and I only draw with a very light pressure. I've also got my compass down at kind of an angle like this. If I try to draw with the compass straight up at 90 degrees from the table, it makes it harder to draw. So I'm leaning it over on purpose, not just for the benefit of the video, because it is actually easier to draw a circle that way. Now I'm going to take the second sheet that I drew that I traced my dot on, line things up again so that the dots overlap. Technically speaking, I don't really need this to be a tracing job because my compass is still set to 2 inches, and as I move it, you can see it's automatically going to trace that circle. So I can either think of this as tracing, or because I drew the dot in the right place to start with, I can move that first circle out of the way and just start from scratch using the same central dot, but also carefully using the same light pressure and paper movement to ensure that I get a nice even circle. Just take your time. You'll know that you've done a good job if everything lines up. So just there at the very end there, things didn't quite line up. I think that's because I picked the pencil up too quickly. That's okay. That kind of a small error is not going to be detrimental to the overall result here. And I've got a nice enough circle. And I've got 2 copies of the same thing. Okay, so we're going to set one of those copies aside for now. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. On this piece of patty paper, I'm going to add 2 features here. One is a point somewhere between the center and the edge of the paper. The radius of the circle should be 2 inches. And I want my second point that I'm about to draw here somewhere in between there. If I go too close to the center or too close to the edge, it will make the next step in this process very difficult. So my suggestion is that you go somewhere between 1/4 and 1 3/4, somewhere in this range in here. I'm just going to put my second dot at, let's see, maybe I'll go 1 1/4. You don't actually have to measure this, but ideally your second point will be at a different distance between the center and the circle, at the edge of the circle, a different distance than everybody else in your group. I'm going to label this middle point here O, the second point F, and then I'm going to draw the third point. This time I'm going to draw my point on the edge of the circle here, right on the circle itself. I want this third point to be somewhere not too nicely lined up with the other 2. If I draw my third point here, I can still do all the things in the next several steps, but it will be awkward and difficult to make my measurements. So I'm going to put my third dot somewhere around in here, maybe as far out as here, and I could go on this side as well. So I'm just going to put my third dot, maybe, I think I'll put it there. I could even maybe go as far out as here, but what you don't want is to be almost lined up or lined up with the other 2 dots. One of the people in your group should have a second dot that's actually the same as the first dot. In other words, they never really drew their second dot, but their first dot serves as the first and second dot, in which case they'll have an O and an F right here. They'll still have a third dot, but they'll only have 2 dots total on the page. All right, with what I've got so far, I'm now going to take the second piece of patty paper, lay it over the top. This time I do need to make sure that my circles line up as much as I possibly can, and I'm going to trace my other 2 dots. Okay, I'm not tracing the labels, just the dots themselves. And I can go ahead and set that piece aside again for now. I should have labeled this third dot. Let's call it X. So now I have a piece of patty paper with a dot in the center, a circle 2 inches in diameter, 2 inches in radius, a second dot somewhere inside the circle, and a third dot on the circle. The next step is to take the dot we called X and line it up so that it overlaps on the dot F by folding the paper. So I'm going to turn my paper slightly, pick up this edge, and lay the dot X over the dot F. And I can see through the back of the paper, I can see where the dots are and I can line them up. Once I've got them carefully lined up, and it's the dots and not their labels that are lined up, I'm going to make a crease in my paper. Okay? Now, unfold that. I've got a creased paper here. This time you need your ruler and your pencil, and I'm going to draw a radius from O to X. I'm going to draw a line segment that goes from the point O to the point X, or in my case, I find it easier to draw kind of going backwards and going from X back to O. But I only want from O to X, nothing either side of it. So now I have a circle, I have a radius of that circle, and I have a crease kind of going through that radius because I folded the point X over onto this randomly placed point F. Okay? So having finished my radius, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold the paper on the same crease as I made earlier, and I'm going to flip it over. Leaving it folded, take the whole thing and turn it over so you're looking at the other half, if you will, at the back. Take your ruler again, and this time I'm going to draw the line segment. I'll come in from the top. I think it's a little easier for you to see. I'm going to trace the line segment that goes from X back towards the folded edge of the paper. So I'm going to trace just that piece of the line segment that I can see through the back with the paper folded. Because it's folded at kind of a weird angle here, I don't get the whole thing. I just get that part of my radius from the other side. If I unfold this now, I can see I've got kind of a forked line. Here's my original radius from O to X. And the piece that I just traced shows through from the back, and it starts here at the crease. Let's put another point there. We'll call that one P. It starts at the crease and goes to F. And that's all I need to do for this layer. So I'm going to call that layer 1, and I'm going to set it aside.